So another thing that's kind of banging around inside my head right now, and this is a little nerdy and wonky, but I kind of want to talk about economics a little bit. Don't fall asleep yet. Don't fall asleep yet. It's not gonna be that bad. We have talked a fair bit about the concentration of wealth and the wealth gap and the extremely powerful and what they tend to do with their money, buying our politicians, buying our media outlets. We've now kind of reached an inflection point where they're buying up entire subdivisions. You'll never own anything again. You'll rent it all and you'll like it. I don't know if you guys have heard that. I think that came from was it the World Bank or the IMF had their local meeting, and a bunch of extraordinarily wealthy, like 0.01 percenters were sitting there and talking about their game plan so that you'll never own another car. You'll just lease them all, or you'll use a robot Uber and you'll never own a home again. They'll just rent it out to you and you won't have to worry about cutting the lawn. They'll do it for you. And I'm sure that they'll get right on it when your water heater fails, right?
It's like they don't see human beings as people. They're just a source of profit.
As I said in one of our
revenue.
previous videos, we're all just pawns on the chessboard, and they just move us around we're a means by which they can increase their profits.
Right, but we're not inherently pawns. They use us as pawns.
Oh yeah, no. We're people. We're people with kids and families and wives and husbands and dreams and businesses we want to create, and yeah, but in their mind, no.
Right.
There are a number of problems that come from the extreme gap in wealth. And as time goes on, we'll get into more of them. But the one I kind of want to zero in on right now is what happens when the 10,000 people in your little town have extra money to spend versus what happens when 100 billionaires have extra money to spend, okay? When your community of 10,000 people have extra money to spend, and this is by the numbers, they tend to spend it. Whether it's a nice dinner out, whether it's a home improvement project, whether it's school clothes for the kids, whether it's new fishing or hunting gear, or starting a new hobby, whatever it is, people tend to spend it. And we're talking regular people here. But when somebody who has a net worth of 50 million, right, and has a monthly income of 4 or 5 million a month, okay, and passive income and through investments and whatnot, when that demographic has extra money, they buy art with it. They park it in the stock market. They invest it somewhere. One of the defining qualities of a healthy and vibrant economy, and let's be fair, regardless of what you think about capitalism, a healthy and thriving economy is good for everyone. It's good for the 1%. It's good for the middle class. It's good for the working poor. A healthy and thriving economy means opportunity and abundance, okay, for everyone. One of the requirements for a broad, healthy, and thriving economy is something that economists call monetary velocity, or the velocity of money. And to make that really simple, what that means is you get your paycheck and then you go down to the local baker and you buy a loaf of bread. And then that baker takes that money and some of it goes to pay their employee, some of it goes to the flour distributor. And then that flour distributor, some of that money goes to pay their employees, and The other part goes to the fleet mechanic that maintains their vehicle, and then the money that goes there. Yeah, and it's of course, and every one of these, I'm just following one thread, right? But it goes in a dozen different directions, right? But you pay the fleet mechanic to maintain the vehicle. Well, now he's going to go and pay the other mechanics in his shop, and then some of that money goes to the local auto parts supplier, and on and on and on. That money is moving. The velocity of that money is positive, right? It's flowing. And at every step of the way, everybody's getting paid, right?
Right. But billionaires are hoarders.
And at every step, every one of those transactions, regardless of how you feel about it, there's taxation that happens, right? So not only does it benefit the workers and the business owners, it benefits the local municipality. Now they have money to pay for their snow plows and to upgrade and maintain their sewer department and
police and
fire and all of those things. And as you said, you got ahead of me there, but that 100%, what happens with these wealthy is that that money leaves circulation, okay? And so in a society where you have larger numbers of people who control more and more and more and more of the wealth, the velocity of money gets slower and slower and slower. So having, as I've alluded to before, 2,000 people controlling 50% of all the wealth in a country or a world is a problem on its own, because that means there's less to go around for everybody else, okay? But then when you look at what is being done with that money, and it is being parked and stagnant, okay? And that decrease in velocity within the economy has all kinds of, that's the trickle down. It has all these trickle down effects. It means that there's less money going around. It means there's less economic viability. It means there's less to go around, which makes it a little bit more difficult for new businesses to get up and going. And I had a video coming in the future. I'm going to pull together some numbers. But we are at historic lows for new business creation. So, you know, right now we've got our Apples and our Amazons and our Boeings and our General Electrics. But by the numbers, 20 or 30 years from now, we do not have, that pipeline is drying up because the amount of resources required to get a business up and running, and then the velocity of money within the economy to fuel those businesses to grow to the point where they're an Amazon or a Boeing, are decreasing. So this is a little short one, but I just wanted to kind of point out the fact that, like, from an economic standpoint, it is bad for everyone as the velocity of money decreases and it gets locked away. You know, even if a billionaire, they've already got a couple of mansions. I don't hold that against them. They've already got a private jet and a yacht and a garage with some sweet rides in it. And so the more money that comes to them, it's not like they're going to go out and buy 100 more mansions. They're not going to go out and buy 100 more Ferraris, Lamborghinis, and Maseratis. Okay, there's a limit to what they can buy because they already have literally everything they need and everything they could ever want. So that's where the velocity of money starts to decrease, because now it just starts getting parked in investments, sound long-term investments. And, you know, the old line that if they have more money, well, they'll create a whole new factory. That's not really how it works in reality. You know, maybe, yeah, I'm sure you can find one or two cases where that is indeed what happened. But in 99, 98% of the cases, that money just gets invested. It gets locked up out of the economy.
Well, that's what most people think of, at least as far as I know. When they hear trickle down, they think of trickle down economics, which means as the rich get richer, they're going to start creating new businesses and creating more jobs and expanding opportunity for people. But that doesn't seem, I mean, it seems like that theory has been disproven.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
It actually doesn't happen like that.
For one, like, if there was ever a leg for trickle down economics to stand on, that leg existed back when stakeholder capitalism was still a thing. As I mentioned in our previous discussion, how they would invest in the local community and doing all these things. But as the the structure and the rules governing business got changed over the last 40 years or so, the incentives behind that stakeholder capitalism have been taken away and they've been replaced with the incentives behind shareholder capitalism. So now the incentive is not to trickle it down, okay, and invest in local communities. The incentive is in doing stock buybacks and paying out dividends. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect is that by the numbers, large corporations contribute a very tiny percent to overall job growth every year. The largest source of new job creation is not corporations, it's small independent businesses starting up. And because the economic lifeblood, the fertile ground in which small businesses, where people take those risks and go out there, the ground is not as fertile as it once was. Because, again, all these subjects sort of tie together. The replacement of stakeholder capitalism with shareholder capitalism, which changed the incentive structure, which then allowed for this massive wealth gap to grow, which meant that all this money was collecting up at the top, and now the velocity of money has been slow because it's all been locked away into these investments, which means that Main Street is not doing as well by the numbers in 2025 as it was in 1985 or 1965. So the pool of resources that would normally be the seed funds or even just the abundance of time and the connection within community that was a seed ground for new business to be created. Every single one of these things have had a little bit of meat sliced off them, a little bit of meat sliced off them, a little bit of meat sliced off them, slowly but inexorably over the last 40 years or so. And so 100% trickle-down economics has been absolutely disproven, but it is also, it's a contributing factor as, I mean, again, this is all one kind of interconnected piece where the old line about trickle-down economics, and we're living in the world that is created by trickle-down economics.
By the greed is good Gordon Gekko mentality of capitalism, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's good for the individual, for the individual with the capital who is positioned at the right location within the economy.
So that leads me to my next question,
which is an extremely tiny minority,
right?
Like 1%,
so,
2%.
Yes, I believe this is true, and maybe you can shed some light on this. Is I believe that the playing field for investing in our economy has totally been tipped in favor of the extraordinarily wealthy and against ordinary working people investing in the stock market. And the second thing being that I know a lot of people and who are on the right side of the political spectrum who are convinced that they are going to be able to find the keys to the system so that they will also become millionaires or billionaires. And I'm pretty sure that that's not going to happen for them. And a lot of that is because of the way that the playing field has been tipped.
There's a lot there. So yeah, that's not a quick question. So I will say, let's say you wanted to start a business and you're just an average schmo. You're not connected. You come from a working class background. And when I say you're not connected, you don't have an uncle that's got a bunch of money, right, that wants to invest in you. Really, you've got two options. And this is something that I can speak to because the whole reason I got into the trades, the whole reason I got my trucking license was to get together the capital to start my own business. So you really only have two options. You're either going to squirrel away as much money as you can and save it up. And with some types of businesses, that's probably reasonable. If you wanted to print T-shirts, you only need a couple grand for for a Hopkins 6-color press and a platen dryer and buy some t-shirts and go out and hang some flyers, and you could probably do that for 15 grand or so. If you wanted to open something like a coffee shop, you're probably going to need 100, depending upon where you're living, 150K in materials to get your store set up and running. So you've got two options, one of which being squirreling away your nickels and your pennies until you have enough to start that business. Or you have to go to your local bank or credit union and beg and borrow for a loan from them. There's a limit to how much an individual like you or I, a working class normal person, could even borrow.
Especially if you don't have that much experience in the business that you're starting.
Yep. Well, I mean, if you have a really, really, really solid business plan and you come with all of your research done up and all of your market research and you lay it out in front of them, you can make that really good case. You can probably get a decent chunk of change from your local bank, but there's still an upward limit. They're not gonna loan you $30 million to build a factory. Okay. Yeah. However, if you already have that big bag of capital, okay, and you are connected, okay, and they can put you in the room with venture capitalists and whatnot, and you can sell your idea, they will literally throw money at you. You look at a lot of the tech companies; they've been running in a deficit for years and years and years because they're up there, they're connected, and the venture capitalists believe in them, and they will just huck money at it, huck money at it, huck money at it. So, I don't want to tell anybody at any level whether or not they are delusional to believe that they're going to make it, okay? Yeah. Because there is always the exception that makes the rule. Every once in a while, I mean, to say that you can't still, and that is a good point to bring up at this point, because I also have a lot of friends on the conservative side, and they believe with every ounce of their being that if you just work hard enough, and if you're just diligent enough, and you put enough of yourself into it, you can make it. And the fact of the matter is, 1 in 100, yep, I think they probably can. But that means 99 out of 100, okay, are going to bang their head against that wall and either limp along or they're not going to make it. And the point that I would like to make, and that I think is becoming increasingly obvious as the time, is that, and again, I'm just using random numbers, 1 out of 100 today can probably make that happen, okay? Mm-hmm. 20 years ago, I want to say it was probably 5 out of 100, okay? And 60 years ago, it was probably 40 out of 100. And we're on this curve where every year, like the statistical likelihood that whatever business plan you have, regardless of the amount of effort and work that you put in, it gets harder and harder and harder. And that is going to be different depending upon your zip code and your connections.
So do you have some specifics you can share about what those roadblocks are that are tipping the playing field against ordinary working people making it up to that next level?
I could probably dig some up off the top of my head here. Like, I mean, one, and I kind of feel like I'm beating this dead horse. A part of it is, I think back to my grandpa, who he knew, right? Okay, mm-hmm. when he got out of World War II, he was able to get a job that supported, how many aunts and uncles do I have? Like a whole herd of kids, okay? My dad and my aunts and uncles, 1, 2, 3, 6, 7 of them?
Well, there's 5. There's the 5 brothers and sisters.
Right. Okay. So 5 kids, 2 cats, a dog, rabbits, a big house in a nice area, and grandma could stay home. Okay. And he did that on 1 job. And yeah, he put in a couple of extra hours. Okay. But with that starting point, okay, he purchased an auto parts store and a brake caliper remanufacturing factory that then grew to have a monopoly over 3 states. Okay? Okay? That doesn't really happen anymore. That you could support a large, beautiful home, 5 kids, and get 2 businesses off the ground and running from a single income. Okay, so that's probably the biggest thing, and what I mean by that is that, like, the amount of resources available have been shrunk and shrunk and shrunk. And when I talk about resources, I don't just mean like materials. I mean access to money and funds, especially in direct proportion to what things cost now. Okay, so you didn't need as much money back then because things were a lot less expensive. Okay, so all of the input costs were much lower. Okay, and the amount of money in relation to the input costs was higher. Okay, because those 2,000 people that own 50% of everything, they didn't. Those 2,000 people in 1940, whatever it was, maybe, yeah, I was gonna say, but they instead of owning 50% of everything, they maybe own 20% of everything.
Right.
Okay, so 30% of all the money available in this country has been sucked up and parked in somebody's investments instead of being, again, coming back to that velocity of money out there circulating around, so that there was abundance. Not only was there more money to be had, but more people had money. Which means if you had a decent business idea and you're willing to show up and do the hard work, you had plenty of customers coming to you who weren't going to squabble and bitch and complain about, you're charging me this much for this. They were just like, oh, that's how much it costs. And there you go. Because they weren't in this constant state of inflation shock. So not only was there an abundance of financial resources, but as I mentioned, Grandpa was able to get those 2 businesses up and running on the single income. Now you've got couples working 40 and 50 hours a week who aren't even having kids because they don't have the time and they can't afford it.
Right.
We've got
it's unbelievable what kids cost.
Yeah, well, and that's what contributes to these falling birth rates. That's just a symptom. That's a byproduct of the scarcity that we're living in.
Right.
But that's the first of many roadblocks to you or I creating the next General Electric or next Boeing or next Edison or next whatever it is, right? I mean, people want to talk about the self-made millionaires. Jeff Bezos received like hundreds of thousands of dollars of seed money from his family to get Amazon books up and going.
How much?
Hundreds of thousands.
Whoa.
He received multiple loans. I think the first one was I'm sorry, I take that. He started out as, I think he was an investment banker, and so he committed close to $100,000 of his own money, and then he received a loan from his parents in the neighborhood of like $150,000. So I don't know personally anybody that's got access to $250,000 to get an online bookstore up and running today.
Right,
okay.
And I remember.
And then you look at Bill Gates. Received, several thousand, tens of thousands of dollars from his family and lived in their home and got the business started in their garage. Now that's the closest to the self-made, but there was still an abundance of financial resources that he was gifted by his family. And I'm not trying to take anything away from these guys because what the 2 of them built is truly astonishing, but they were not self-made. They had a lot of help.
Entirely, right.
Yeah, they had a lot of help. They had they had access to an abundance of resources that the vast majority of people don't have.
Circling back to this idea that there are people who really, really have aspirations to be a millionaire or a billionaire, but one factor that they also don't take into account is there is not unlimited room at the top, because if you reach a tipping point of billionaires, like either you have massive inflation or something else has to change. Because if you just start printing more money so that you have enough money for these billionaires to have billions of dollars, then you've added more money into the system, which causes inflation. It causes every individual dollar to be worth less and have less purchasing power. That's just a fact that you cannot get around. And
Well, okay, so I kind of want to, some aspects of that I want to put a pin in, because that is that's a bigger conversation. If y'all want to do some homework, modern monetary theory. It's got some very interesting ideas about printing money, how it's spent, and deficits. But again, that's a much bigger conversation. We're talking about wealth versus working your way to the top. And the fact of the matter is, you look at the vast majority of the people that are in this demographic, this 1 or 2% demographic, the overwhelming majority, okay, this is inherited wealth. This comes from, and where it is not, probably the next largest group are people who have made their careers in finance, okay? They are working, they're traders, they are investment bankers, and that is the career path they chose. So if you're in that, yeah, you're probably headed there, okay? Unless you're really bad at it, okay?
right.
Now,
True.
come down, okay? We're talking the numbers of people that are in this 1-2% class. Now you're into the Jeff Bezoses and the and we keep leaving them out. The Mark Zuckerbergs, who's up there with them too, okay? Or the Elon Musks, okay? Every single one of those, or the Bill Gateses, okay? Every single one of these people did one of two things. They actually, with the exception of Elon Musk, they all just happen to have the right idea in exactly the right moment. Think about Bill Gates. He came along, or we can include the Apple guy.
Not Tim Cook, the other guy.
The one who started it.
Yeah.
Steve Jobs.
there we
Okay.
go.
So look at Steve Jobs and Bill Gates. Okay. They were right there at the forefront of the computer and the personal computer revolution.
Right.
Right. Okay. So I suppose you can get lucky, and that's just it. It's really about luck and timing. Okay. So that, and then you look at like a Zuckerberg and Bezos, a Zuckerberg and a Bezos, okay? And that was just, again, the timing and the positioning, right? Again, luck, okay? Yes, hard work, yes, creativity, yes, a good idea, but the timing. There are a lot of people, as a matter of fact, there have been quite a few people who've come along and wanted to try and duplicate what Jeff Bezos has done. And in every single case, one or two things happened. They failed miserably, and you don't know their name, or B, Jeff Bezos and Amazon bought them out.
Yeah.
Okay? And the people that got bought out, they are not in that multimillionaire class. Okay? And you look at a Zuckerberg, okay? Many people have come along and tried to recreate what Facebook has, and every single one of them have failed. I've checked a few of them out, hoping for one that was a little less cringe than Facebook. None of them work as well. Okay, so
Not even
are
Google
you?
Plus.
So if you dream of being there, are you going to inherit millions and millions and millions of dollars? Are you in investment banking? Are you sitting at a strategic inflection point within technological innovation where you are ready to capitalize upon a consumer revolution? Because if not, you're just gonna be a tiny little fish. Now, I'm talking about the 1-2%, okay?
Right.
But some of these folks that you are talking about, that you're trying to bring up, I don't think they even necessarily aspire to be that. I think they're perfectly happy to be like the multi-level marketing
big fish
guru.
in the small pond.
They're perfectly happy to be a tiny fish in that big pond. You know what I mean? Because they're already at that point. It's the idea of having, and I'm sorry, I'm gonna use bad language because there's a guy I know. He's got fuck you wealth. Okay, he works with me at my company. Okay, but he has money. He's invested in several different businesses, and he is literally just there because he wants to be, because it's fun. Okay,
Wow.
and if they,
Must be nice.
and I asked him one time, I was like, so what is your long-term plan, man? He's like, I don't know. I'm gonna hang out here until it's not fun anymore, and I'll go do something else. And I think that is what a lot of those folks aspire to. And I wouldn't hold it against them unless the means by which they want to acquire that wealth is amoral and means you have to trample upon and step upon other people.
Right.
And now that's between you and your God. And in that case, I look forward to Judgment Day for you. Yeah, but they don't care. They don't care if that's what they are. Now, if they're somebody who has a moral conscience and a moral center, they're just going to have to work their tails off, because I feel like there are probably two different demographics of people that are in that mid-tier upper wealth. And there are the completely amoral, who are all about grift and all about exploitation. They are what in classical economics are concerned rent seekers. I call them parasites. They are basically people who will sit at a strategic point within the economy with their hand out, collecting in between other people's effort and transactions. Okay. And if they have to use shady business practices or false advertising to get that dollar, that's what they'll do. There's that group. And then there's the other group who are addicted to work, are addicted to building things. Okay. And they also, I believe it's realistic for them to make it there. And those are probably the ones in this demographic you're talking about that are the ones who are the only ones that I really am interested in speaking to. And the thing that I would say to them in our current economic reality is something that I've alluded to before, is that we have a big difference between business and corporations, okay? And the corporations, because that is one of these areas where there is such a profound concentration of wealth, that they have bought the politicians to write the rules to favor them, to pull the ladder up behind them. Because they don't, as much as they want to talk about free market economics, they actually don't want competition. It's way too much work for them.
Right.
So if they can prevent people from reaching their level and reduce the amount of competition that they have to worry about, unless it's the good old boys club, they're already, so I'm going to say, I think of two businesses that kind of compete. Well, we'll say Apple versus Google, they're competing for some of the same things, but the CEOs, they're probably going to some of the same conferences and they're having a beer with each other and they don't really hate each other. They're like, hey, buddy, what's going on? But they pulled that ladder up behind them, right? So that it's more difficult for other people to come up. So the people who aspire to climb that ladder recognize that you are building a business in a regulatory and tax environment that is designed to make it difficult for you to transition up to that level, but makes it easier for those at the top to just scoop it in, scoop it in, scoop it in. Because there are health and safety and worker right rules, laws, and regulations that exist. Okay, and the fact of the matter is, if you look at the meat packing industry, okay, there's been a lot of consolidation in the meat and the agriculture industries, and because there's like 2 or 3 major corporations that control all of the meat packing in this country, okay, and meat processing. They have strong lobbying wings in Washington, D.C., okay? Because they have these connections, because they have their lobbyists there, because they bankroll politicians' campaigns,
they get favored.
They get carve-outs and cutouts to make it easier for them to make a profit because they don't have to jump through these particular hoops. Whereas if you wanted to be the scrappy upstart who is rooted in your community, you're more of that stakeholder capitalist than you are that shareholder capitalist, and you want to try and do that, and that's how you want to be that millionaire. Well, guess what? Now the game is rigged against you. But this comes back to the whole narrative and the way media spins things, because they want to talk about, oh, these job killing regulations and blah, 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 blah. They're only killing the jobs on the people down here. Meanwhile, they're getting carve outs for the people up there. But guess what? The politicians that want to use that rhetoric are the same ones that are just as likely to make it more difficult for you down here
Right.
than it is for those guys up there.
It's brutal. It's
So
brutal.
yeah, but that's
Ugly, ugly game.
laying that all out though. That's why we're here, right?
That's why we're here.